Good evening, everybody. As you all know, we have a primary election in just 4 short days. So when you go to the polls next Tuesday, remember Brown 2016. I am really sorry, everybody. I've just been informed that's the wrong speech. Apparently I still have 20-something years before that speech. But really, though, you wouldn't believe how many people have told me I should run for office this year. Foster. Anyway, let me get to this graduation speech thing. Parents, grandparents, faculty, graduates, and esteemed guests. It is my honor to welcome you to the graduation of Argonaut High School's class of 2016 as the ASB president. Also, a quick message to those esteemed guests, especially local business owners. A lot of us will be back in a couple of years, fresh college graduates, probably homeless, hungry, looking for jobs, so please keep us in mind. This year at Argonaut High School has definitely been one to remember. We got off to a pretty great start with quite a few new faculty and staff members, including a new principal and vice principal. We can get a big round of applause for Mrs. Hunkins and Mrs. Foster. We had a record number of clubs and student-run organizations on campus this year. I believe the number was in the high 20s, which is incredible. We had an overwhelming amount of positive changes. Personally, I think that's mostly thanks to Mrs. Hunkins and her positive attitude. Let me see what else happened this year. Trying to remember. Give me a second. Oh! Stay Gang! Stay Gang was more lit than ever this year. Let's not forget the big game against Amador. Football players, you might want to forget it. But for the rest of us, in the cheering section, it was crazy. With sirens, costumes, drums made out of buckets and trash cans, and an insane amount of school pride, it's going to be hard to forget Stay Gang. But the big game wasn't just it. There were also some pretty great times at basketball games. From Grady winning the shootout tournament at Amador, to cheering our girls all the way to Sleep Train Arena, to the curtain of distraction. It truly was a great year for Stay Gang. But really, there's going to be a lot that we'll miss next year. The surprise assemblies, countless off-campus lunches, making a fool of ourselves during spirit days in our craziest outfits, messing with teachers because we weren't invited to their weddings this summer, or because they won't let us babysit their kids. Rallies, dances, and the crazy after parties at Denny's. The traditions that surround Argonaut High School are the quirky little routines that we've established with our friends over the years. There's going to be a lot to miss. But I think what we'll miss most of all is seeing each other every day. Most of us will stay in contact through social media or texting. Some of us will see each other during holidays when we come back home. Heck, some of us will be at the same school or workplace next year. But for a lot of us, this may be the last time that we see each other. So embrace these last moments together and don't take anything for granted. This summer, make sure to call up your friends and hang out with them as much as possible. Take some risks and have fun before we're thrown out into the so-called real world. The responsibilities of being a young adult, living on our own, struggling to balance finances, full schedules, and just straight up stress is going to absolutely knock us down. So let's enjoy the freedom while we can. I'd like to read you an excerpt from a poem that I've grown quite fond of, Desiderata by Max Ehrmann. Whatever your labors and aspirations in the noisy confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world. Be careful. Strive to be happy. Thanks to Mrs. Lloyd's AP Poetry class this year, I think that we can effectively analyze the poem to see that it's simply just a bagel. For those of you who weren't in Mrs. Lloyd's class, what I mean is that the poem gets right to the point. Don't let anybody get in the way of your goals and aspirations. The world may seem like a pretty terrible place at times, but keep your head up and do what makes you happy. Earlier, you heard me give my presidential candidacy speech. And as much as I love the idea of being president, I still have 20 or 30 years, maybe more. But plans could always change. I might get to college and find out that I hate politics. It could happen. But my point being, don't get too far ahead of yourself. Never be afraid to live in the now and learn from your experiences. As you move through life and take these next steps, remember who you are. Over these past 4 years, I've learned quite a few lessons from Mr. Hunkins. Most of them non-academic, but still. One of the most important things I've learned from Mr. Hunkins is that we can't take no for an answer. Question those with power and make them think about their authority by asking one simple question. Do you know who I am? I'd like to leave you with one quick piece of advice. When we celebrated my great-grandmother's 97th birthday back in July, we asked her, "Grandbetty, what's the secret to living such a long life?" Her answer was simple. Just be good. Class of 2016, as we go into this world and face the unpredictable journey, however you wish to interpret it, just be good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dahkota. Our next speaker is not only a multi